Hey Brad, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Mark. How's it going today?
I'm doing good, man. Enjoying the playoff hockey so far.
It's been a little crazy, but I'm enjoying it.
Has it ever?
Yeah.
Well, let's take it up.
Let's go.
He shoots. He scores.
You're listening to The Neutral Zone with Brad and Mark. Coming at you from the land of the free.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode with your guys from The Neutral Zone, Brad and Mark.
Yeah, we're coming back at you here from the prairies. Got some nice weather. It's not quite hockey weather anymore, but we're enjoying it. We're enjoying the playoff hockey.
That's right. We are glued to the TVs just like anybody else has, right, Brad?
Yeah, we're glued to it, and there's been some definite surprises. We're coming to you right at the exact time that we just watched Tampa Bay get swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets after a 62-win season. So that was unreal. I don't think anybody saw that one coming.
What happened there? That's crazy.
I have no idea. It just seemed like they came off the rails in the first game and never got it back. It's unreal.
They didn't find a scoring touch there. They just struggled the whole playoff round with them. 4 straight games. That's crazy to believe.
Yeah, it was bizarre. It was bizarre to watch.
It's crazy to believe, but at the same time, I mean, Columbus did come into the playoffs hot. Before, when we were talking about it, we did notice that we said that, the key to Columbus is if they can use that motivation that they had at the end of the regular season in their last 10 games that they were playing. If they could keep that kind of intensity going, and they did.
I agree, and I think the big thing there would be the fact that, we talked about this, and we're kind of like, you almost had a disbelief that could a team as good as what Tampa Bay appeared to be this year, could the old little things that can get a team sometimes, would they affect them? Like, obviously, with them clinching so early, they weren't playing any meaningful games for the last 2-3 weeks of the season, really. Longer than that, because, they knew they were clinched for a long time, even before they actually clinched, right? Mm-hmm. The President's Trophy curse, people talk about that. I don't think we've seen a President's Trophy team win in quite a long time. Just unreal stuff, right? They mentioned it on the broadcast as we were watching that even though these things have happened in the past, this is the first time that a President's Trophy winner has been tossed in the first round since Vancouver back in, I think it was 2010?
2012,
something like that. The year that the Kings
the LA Kings swept them and went on
to win the cup. So that might be, maybe that's a good omen for Columbus.
Is that Columbus?
It could be. You never know. I don't know.
Columbus just swept the best team that we've seen since apparently the Red Wings back in 95-96. Okay, they matched that record. So is Columbus the new favorite out of the East to advance to the Cup Finals because of this?
I don't know. I wouldn't say so. I think all you're seeing there is there's certain teams, and we'll talk about another series a little later on, and I think this might be the case. I think there's just certain teams that match up against certain other teams just really well, right? Just there's something about the way the two teams play, their styles, that those teams just match up. And they could, Columbus very well might. I'm not saying they won't be, but they could just turn around in the next series, whether it's Toronto or Boston, whichever team gets through from that series. That might just be a nightmare matchup for them. So I don't think you can definitively say now that just because they beat Tampa, that Columbus is now the favorite, right? I think there's so many variables that you just can't really judge. I think they caught Tampa at the right time, and they caught Tampa unaware. I think Tampa came in and they were expecting to be a cakewalk, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
So and you can't do that with any team coming into the playoffs. That's a dangerous game, a dangerous mindset, because once you're in that mindset, it's pretty tough to get out of it, I think.
Well, it's obvious that they couldn't find the same mojo that Columbus found. Columbus dominated a lot of that hockey.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch a lot of it.
I watched the first couple of games and just watched the last little bit of it here. But Columbus was the better team with the puck. They definitely kept Tampa Bay off the score sheet, which is huge to do.
Yeah.
Hedman missed 2 games.
Kucherov missed a game with the suspension.
Yeah. Was that a deserving suspension?
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think if you watch that play, the Columbus player was down on his knees. He was vulnerable, and Kucherov had every opportunity to pull up from that hit, and he didn't. So I believe it was definitely deserving of a suspension. I don't care if you're Kucherov, McDavid, Crosby, or if you're just a fourth line guy that's first year in the league or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a suspendable hit.
Okay,
so.
Let's talk about suspensions because there's been a couple now.
Yeah.
Let's switch forward to let's just talk about the Joe Thornton one first, which was a bit of a dirty hit on what was the player's name there?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, Nosek.
Nosek, yeah. Which was a bit of a dirty shoulder shot to the head.
Give a little bit of a chicken wing out there. Yeah, he stuck that arm out there a little bit.
Yeah, definitely worth suspension there.
I would say so. I think that if you watch that play, and I think that I don't think Thornton meant to do it. I think it almost looked like he was trying to get out of the way. And I think by trying to get out of the way, he almost made it worse.
If you compare those 2 hits, though, I think the Kucherov one was definitely a lot more fierce.
The Kucherov one was definitely worse because, like I said, I honestly think that Thornton was trying to get out of the way a little bit. And Kucherov, I mean, he knew
he cut in tight between him and the player and his defenseman.
And for Kucherov, I mean, he came from 2 to 3 strides away. The guy was already on his knees, and he didn't slow down, right? So he had like I said, I don't think Thornton had an opportunity to avoid contact. I think it was inevitable. It's just it was unfortunate where the contact was. With Kucherov, he had every opportunity to turn from that hit. So I don't care if you're the leading scorer in the league, like I said, or if you get a goal in the season, right? That's a suspendable hit. Thornton, I think it deserved a suspension too. It wasn't as intentional as the Kucherov one.
If you compare the 2, though, do you think it's still sufficient enough?
I think Kucherov should have got more. Yeah, I think he should have got 2 games.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I just think that you know what? That's the bit where, I don't think he's a dirty player or he intended to hurt the guy. However, in that moment, he had the time. He knew that he was going to hurt the guy. And maybe it was just a split second game.
Well, and it
right?
was a stick to the head, right?
Yeah.
It was down low on the boards. And
tough.
As I say that, I'm thinking about the Kadri suspension too, where the league deemed that he used his stick as a weapon as well.
They did.
So
and he's got a history.
Kucherov is using his stick as a bit of a weapon as well, which that's how it seemed to look to me. He definitely could have deserved more than 1 penalty when you're comparing it to what happened to Kadri. Now, with Kadri being the repeat offender, here's the 3rd suspension so far of the playoffs, I believe.
I think so, yeah. So that'd be the 3 suspensions that have happened so far, yeah.
He gets it out for the season series against Boston Bruins. So however that might be, a minimum 3, maximum 5.
I think that's how it would break down because that was game 2 it happened in, right?
So that's a pretty serious hit for Kadri. That game 2 was pretty out of hand as well.
Everybody complains about the refs, right? I mean, it's as deep of a tradition with hockey that fighting is than anything you can think of, right? It's just one of those things where everybody wants to complain about the refs.
Sure.
This year, though, I don't know. The reffing, in my opinion, and this might get me some flack from some people, but the reffing has been absolutely awful all the way around. And I think from my viewpoint as a Canadian, I find that it's sometimes seems like it can be slanted away from Canadian teams.
It kind of feels that way sometimes.
It feels that way sometimes. And I'm not trying to complain. I'm not trying to say, poor Canadian teams. I'm just saying what I'm observing, even when I'm watching series as a impartial judge, it just feels a lot like sometimes that call's going one way and it's not going the other way, and it seems to be against Canadian teams. So,
well, okay, like I've been watching the Toronto series, and I noticed in the first game I thought the reffing was pretty decent. I had no complaints about that whatsoever. And I'm not one of those fans to sit there and usually judge the refs so much. I don't.
Yeah, you try not to be, for sure.
Yeah, I don't try to take to blaming the refs after every single game. I can try to see it from both sides. That being said, in the playoffs, when I think it was DeBrusk, although I'm not sure, it could have been Coyle who threw the elbow and hit, I think it was Janssen in the nose, and he came up bloody, and there was no penalty from that.
Mm-hmm.
And then DeBrusk takes down Kadri aggressively along the boards, and I think they both get called for a penalty. When you watch replay, I don't know who saw what there to put a call on Kadri, and then Kadri gets a knee with DeBrusk, and then DeBrusk slams Marleau into the rounded postings. Now I've heard a rumbling of there being an unwritten code to not slamming a 20-year veteran into the boards. Is this true for the playoffs?
I think that sort of stuff goes out. It goes out the window a little bit in the playoffs. When I think, though, what you're seeing happening, and it's happened throughout the year. There's been a few incidents where this has been the case, but the refs don't make certain calls, and then things just spiral out of control, right? And then eventually somebody gets tagged, like the Kadri situation, for example, gets tagged with a severe penalty, a suspension, whatever it might be. However, if they had just called the penalties evenly and originally like they should have, and I get it, refs are humans, they make mistakes, but I've watched plays where refs have literally been looking at the penalty happen and don't make a call. Yeah. And then it just kind of spirals, this player gets back to that player, and then that player gets back at that player, and it goes back and forth until somebody gets a bad penalty.
As a fan watching, I don't understand when you see a blatant elbow to the face where a guy comes up bloody and the ref keeps his whistle away, and then a period and a half later, now in the dire half of a second period or in the third period, now you're calling the little hook on the side of the board in the neutral zone.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, right? It's one of those things.
As a fan, I want to see consistent reffing.
Exactly.
In a game 2, in period 1 of game number 2, I don't think it's so necessary that the refs have to keep your whistles away. If you want to keep them away, then you damn well better keep them away the whole entire
time.
Game,
it's
right?
either
it's got to just be consistency.
Yeah, it's either
That's
glass full or glass empty, right? And I agree. I think that I also don't agree with the fact of as soon as the playoffs start that the rules change completely.
No,
all of a sudden we're going to allow slashes. We're going to allow this. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You're going to have guys breaking their hands, right? We had it a few years ago where Johnny Gaudreau broke his finger because he got slashed 21 times in a game, and it's just one of those things where you're calling it that way in the regular season. You're strict on that stuff, and then all of a sudden the playoffs comes along, and all of a sudden it's playoff hockey, and because they want to let the guys play and they don't want to affect the outcome. Well, I find that you're affecting the outcome a lot more when you're not calling those penalties, because things, like I said, they start to spiral, they snowball, and eventually someone's sticking out a knee or someone's throwing an elbow out, and it's getting
I'm
ridiculous.
Just saying,
right?
if like you're saying, if we kept the calling the same from the regular season into the playoffs, then do you think we'd see these big dirty hits happening?
No, I think
you're just allowing players' frustration to boil over. And,
exactly.
And don't get me wrong, what Kadri did to DeBrusk, that is 100% Kadri's fault.
For sure.
Okay, I'm not trying to say
reaction.
that it's the refs' faults, and that if they would have done this, then they wouldn't have done that.
Right.
I'm kind of saying that, but in the moment, as to what happened,
he's responsible for his own actions.
He's responsible
for
his own actions.
For sure, I agree.
But if those calls have been made, a guy like Kadri, who's been known to have a short temper towards that stuff,
maybe he doesn't make that play.
Yeah,
I agree 100%. And it's that's how it gets out of hand. And we saw it. We're seeing it in the playoffs right now. We saw it in a few games. I can give you one instance for sure where Calgary and San Jose played on New Year's Eve, and as one of the Calgary players, Sam Bennett, was skating in front of the net. The San Jose goalie wound up and gave him a shot with his goalie stick right into the midsection, the groin area. No call, nothing happened. Late in the game, Sam Bennett took a run at one of the San Jose defensemen and hit him. Clean hit outside of the fact it was about half a second late. and the guy wasn't expecting it. It was a heated game, right? Sam Bennett, he made a wrong call. He made a hit that was a little bit late, but if they'd called a penalty on the goalie originally, I'm sure that play wouldn't have happened, right? And there's other. I'm just using an example that I watched personally. There's other examples throughout the year that happened. So it really is. I mean, the calls just need to be consistent, and I mean, the epitome of that for everyone. I think everyone's on the same page with the fact of the goalie interference calls on goals. You don't know where they're going, right? You don't know it. It's a flip of a coin when you're watching it as to whether it's going to be called back or whether it's going to be allowed. So I think that would be in the nutshell the epitome of what's happening with the reffing this year, where it's just there's no consistency, and there's nothing that'll drive players, I imagine, more crazy. And definitely as a fan, I mean, I can attest to it that it drives you just absolutely mental, right?
Well, are they scared? Are they worried? And by the way, after the games and after this officiating happens, you know, as the fans, like we're saying, sitting there watching this happen, afterwards, do these refs not have a boss they have to listen to? Do they not have to come back and respond to somebody for their actions? So somebody's got to be watching that game from the side and looking and going, oh boy, why wasn't that called?
Yeah, you'd think so.
What's going on? And reviewing it with them.
You know, you'd think so, and you always hear the fact that these refs are, you know, they're rewarded with playoff experience, like getting to do playoff games based on how they do throughout the season. Now, I don't know if that happens or not. So I think that's the big thing. There definitely needs to be some review and some possible changes heading into next season, because it's just been far too inconsistent, right? I don't know if that's a training thing or an experience thing, because we got a lot of young refs in the league now. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely something that is a concern, I think, moving forward. But, you know, we could beat this to death and it's not going to change anything, right? It's just players.
It's so frustrating sometimes.
It is. I get you for sure.
So deal with these refs.
But unfortunately, that's the way that it is. And but other than that, in the playoffs have been excellent. There's been some really good hockey. Obviously, we've watched one of the biggest upsets I think we've seen in NHL history.
Yeah,
just happened, right? And the Penguins are down 3-0.
Another one on their way. Yeah,
and they're losing. Last we looked in the third period, they were losing. So I'm not sure what the score is now, but that's another one that could be a huge upset. I mean, it
is over, by the way, Brad.
Penguins lost.
Stop. Yeah, New York Islanders 3, Pittsburgh 1.
Wow. So I mean,
so another sweep there.
It's unreal. I think everybody's brackets have been blowing up.
What are the Islanders doing so well?
You know, I think it's goaltending and defense, right? They've shut it down, and they've been able to just get the goals they needed.
I think the Islanders have a chance at making John Tavares wish that he was still a New York Islander. They have that recipe. The New York Islanders have that recipe that every team wants heading into the playoffs.
Yeah. Of
great goaltending, phenomenal defense, and getting the scoring from everybody. Eberle has
oh my goodness,
like 2012 Eberle here out there skating around. He looks phenomenal with everybody. Barzal, he's looking like the fashionable rookie that we saw last year with the slick hands. We saw it all year too, but now more than ever is he standing out.
You know, and if he can, you know, if they can find just enough offense, their defense has been stellar so far all year, right? And Leonard's been lights out. I don't know if you saw some of the saves he made in the series. Just ridiculous saves.
It's a game I've been trying to watch as much as I can. That series has been great to watch.
He bounces a puck that's fluttering towards his net. He hits it with his head over the net, away from the net, right? The guy's in the zone, obviously. So it's been a very interesting one to watch. If I'd sat here before the playoffs started, Mark, and told you that Pittsburgh and Tampa would both be out in the first round, 4-game sweeps, you would have taken that bet all day that I was wrong, right?
In all my brackets, I'm pretty sure I'm done already. I had Tampa Bay. I had them on a 4-game.
I don't think there's anybody that didn't have Tampa Bay picked for a Stanley Cup, and this is a good segue. You know, we talking about the Islanders and Pittsburgh, but also talking about Tampa and our brackets. I think there's a lot of people who had Tampa Bay Calgary in the finals.
A ton of people out.
And I don't know if you watched the game last night between Calgary and Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
If Calgary doesn't find out what's wrong with them real quick, that series could be over in 5 games.
What's going on there? They look so good in the first game. Mike Smith stands on his head. He looks like veteran. I love his helmet, by the way.
Yeah,
I think it looks
vintage,
so retro, so cool. And Matthew Tkachuk, I knew he would be a good big playoff performer like he was last year. And he's been excellent, and so has everybody else. They all seem to be contributing. Everything seemed to go their way in Game 1. Game 2, not so much. As a Calgary fan, I would have been a little bit worried watching that game unfold. And then Game 3, boom!
It was something to watch. It was pretty wild, and it's that old saying that I don't know if it's so much how good Colorado is, or if it's a combination of how good they seem to be and how bad Calgary is playing. I don't know. It's tough to pinpoint what exactly is going on there. I think a lot of that flows through Nathan MacKinnon. I think big time. I think that if you were to have watched the game last night, it was more so Nathan MacKinnon beating the Flames for the first little bit, and then I think that built confidence for the rest of that team. And as that game went along, they were all over Calgary. It was unreal. I think the shots were something like 40-21 or something like that. And there was a point when the shots were 33-15, something along. Wow. It was just ridiculous, right? They had 21 shots in the first period. The game was over before it even started, pretty much. And this isn't to harp on the refs again whatsoever, but there was one. I think the turning point of that game. Now, again, Colorado outplayed Calgary, so they deserved that victory. But a big turning point in that game is Calgary had a power play in the first, and they were playing really well for about the first 7 to 8 minutes of the first. Had a power play, put one off the post, and then there was a point where MacKinnon was coming in on a breakaway or half breakaway. The defenseman stuck his stick in and lifted his stick a little bit, and MacKinnon put his hands up, and the ref called a hooking penalty. And at the same time, they called a too many men penalty on the ice, even though the puck was about 50 feet away from the bench. The players who were changing weren't involved in the play. Calls you normally wouldn't see called in the regular season, let alone the playoffs. And they were called, and they had a 2-minute 5-on-3. Scored their first goal on that 2-minute 5-on-3, and they never looked back, right? So you can't pin the whole game necessarily on one thing, but we know that this is a game of momentum, right? Our hockey's a game of momentum, and Calgary just seemed like everything that could go wrong for them last night went wrong. And the only players who really showed up were Mike Smith. Even though the score was what it was, he played really good. And Sam Bennett. Those were the two guys who showed up and played, and that seemed to be about it. So it's going to be a weird series to watch because
Well, Sam Bennett kind of took a bit of a cheap shot. No.
Towards to Landeskog?
Yeah. No.
To another player. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. And yeah, they definitely, you saw some frustrations mounting. And I think a big part of that, you and I talked about this off air, the Avalanche players were openly mocking the Flames players on the ice.
Right.
And that's never going to be received well, right? I mean, these guys are professionals. They have pride. So when you start doing something like that doesn't excuse
it. Matt Calvert, he punched in the face.
He punched in the face. Yeah, they got in a little bit of a scrap. Not a scrap, but just kind of pushing and shoving and hitting each other. And Sam Bennett, I think he took an extra shot on Calvert.
But you got a 10-minute.
Yeah, got a 10 minute. There was a few 10 minutes handed out there last night.
Kachuk, he took offense to Landeskog.
Yeah, he got a 10-minute.
And he got him somehow in that whole thing. Landeskog got a cut up above the eye.
Yeah.
And Kachuk was gone.
It's a heated series.
And then another fellow, Hathaway.
Yeah, he
got into a bit of a tango with Zadorov.
Yeah.
It's a very intriguing series.
It is. And it's I kind of said it to you, I think, before that series started, that I saw it being a lot closer than maybe the 1 versus 8 seed suggested. I think Colorado's a better team than their seeding suggests. They had a bad start to the season and some ups and downs, but I think they're a really good team. So should be a very interesting series to watch. And it should be, if Calgary loses, a lot of people's brackets are for sure blowing up, right?
Right.
So,
hey, give kudos out to Cale Maker, by the way.
Yeah, Cale Makar, yeah.
Or Makar for getting his first goal.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool to see.
Good for him.
His mom and dad were there to see it. That's pretty cool.
Pretty cool thing to see, for sure. So
Colorado's definitely beating the odds here in this series, that's for sure.
Yes, we'll see. I think the big telling thing will be how Calgary responds in Game 4.
How do they respond? Does do Calgary make a goalie change?
I don't think they make a goalie change. I don't think Mike Smith was bad. I think the rest of the team in front of him was bad. And the goals that went in were, I mean, they were just... Calgary was letting guys walk right down the pipe and uncontested shoot shots, right? So it's just there were goals that most goalies would have trouble stopping.
I thought the Carolina after Game 2 were going to change their goaltender. I was kind of surprised they went back to Mrazek.
Yeah, and how about Mrazek too, right?
And then Mrazek comes through big time on, their Game 3 on a must-win night.
Yep.
He didn't face too much, only 18 saves, but still,
made the ones he had to make.
Kudos, yeah, they made the ones he had to make,
yeah.
And kudos to the defense for shutting them down. But I'm just kind of tying that to the Calgary series, as maybe it's a good thing. You pick the goalie, ride him to the end, or do you, lose out in 5 here or whatever, and then think, geez, maybe we should have gave the other guy a chance.
It'd be tough, and I'm not, I don't.
You couldn't decide on a goalie all year long.
And I don't envy Bill Peters right now, that's for sure. So, having to make a choice between what he's going to do for goalies or switching lineups and stuff. So,
just Bill Peters, is he that kind of character? You think that he's gutsy enough that he'll switch up goaltending?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Does he want to stay with the veteran?
No, I think he'll go with what he thinks, in his gut, what he thinks is the best. From my observations, that kind of seems to be the type of coach he is. So, we'll have to see. As for, you kind of talked there a little bit about the Carolina and Washington series. What did you think of that Ovechkin-Svechnikov fight later last night?
Oh my God! Well, I guess Svechnikov, he asked for it, but
I don't know if he's happy he did now though.
Well, no, I wouldn't be happy at all.
I haven't seen a fight decision. I haven't seen a fight that lopsided in a long time.
But I get it. I get it from Ovechkin's standpoint too. He's not a guy who's going to back down to a challenge. And you never know. Maybe the kid's a big time fighter anyway. What does Ovechkin know about him? Quite honestly, other than he's a rookie.
They're both Russians.
They're both Russians.
Maybe they know each other a little bit from playing. I'm not too sure. I don't know if they've been on a team together or not.
Yeah, maybe. I'm sure they will be at some point in their life here along the road if the Olympics ever come back or whatever. Svechnikov is a young, talented kid, and he's definitely gonna have a future in front of him. And he just learned a lesson last night.
Pretty ugly.
Yeah, it was ugly.
So that, obviously the question's been raised again of should hockey have fighting in it? What's your stance on it? What do you think?
Well, I personally like it.
I like hockey. I don't think, I saw a lot of people tweeting that if you like fights in hockey, I like hockey. Of course, I like fights in hockey. A lot of people tweeting that if you like fights in hockey, this is look at this is bad. And every time a bad fight like this happens, you kind of see people come out and say, this is why hockey shouldn't have fighting. I don't know.
I've just grown up watching hockey, and fighting has always been a part of it since the 80s, since I started watching back in the 80s. And I just don't, out of all the fights I've ever seen, I don't know if I remember, so many, like just a whole handful of fights ever going horribly wrong. Where one guy gets knocked out and he's seriously injured.
I remember more fights where guys, the fights closed, or fights ended more so because the guys just got tired. Like, I just feel like back in the day with fighting, guys had better balance. Maybe they practiced more, and they had better balance. So you weren't seeing guys, they weren't wrestling each other to the ice. They were standing and throwing bombs until they were too tired to lift their arms anymore for a few minutes, right? Mm-hmm. So it seemed like guys didn't have that danger of falling and hitting their head on the ice. And more so, like you said, I think probably a big part of it too is you had set guys, and you don't see this anymore. You don't have the specific fighters anymore, where back in the day, you had guys who that's what they did.
Yeah,
they fought.
lots of them.
So now you're seeing guys like Svechnikov fight, when he really shouldn't be a guy fighting.
Once the fighting's gone from the hockey world, what are we going to do next? Pick on the checking and take that out of the game?
That's the big concern, right?
And then eventually we'll just go throw him a ring on the ice and let's go, boys.
Let's take away the blades of the sticks.
Not to say that ringette's
nothing wrong with it. It's
any
just,
lesser of a sport, but I'm just saying, what are we doing here? We got a historic game that's always been played this way. We've definitely cleaned it up a ton over the years to make it safer.
Yeah, not to be ridiculous or anything, but if you ever play in a beer league, some of the beer leagues have rules where you can't use slap shots. So are we going to go to that? Are we going to go as far as saying no more slap shots because the puck could hit somebody?
We'll just continue to find something. We'll just continue finding something to.
It's a fast game. It's brutal. I mean, the fact that I find that a lot of these injuries have started to happen more so, like not the fighting, but hits and stuff have happened more so since the red line has been taken out, because there's so much speed coming through the neutral zone. The guys are, the pads are harder. You're just seeing a lot more of contributing factors that are there for why maybe some of these injuries are happening with hits and things of that nature. As for the fighting,
I'm kind of surprised as to how many fights have really happened in these playoffs. By the way, I loved watching Reeves and Kane go at it the other night.
We'll talk about that here in a second. That series has been unreal on the ice and on Twitter too. I don't know if you've seen some of the tweets, but we'll get to that in a second. The last thing I'll say about the fighting, I think it ties into what we were talking about before. I think that the fact that the whistles have been put away now, the guys are frustrated, and you're seeing fights because of that. You're seeing a lot of scrums. You're seeing a lot of pushing. And yes, the intensity is going to ramp up when you're playing a team 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times in a row. However, I think the fact that lots of penalties are going uncalled, guys are ticked off, and so they're getting angry and fighting each other, right?
This is a strategy thing too. I mean, guys use it to build momentum for their team. When they win a fight, that's a big momentum builder for the guys on the bench watching that. Even for the guy who falls down first, that's a big momentum boost for the other guys on the bench because he just took one for the team. They both just took one for the team. They're going to sit in the box, think about what they did for a while, right?
I agree.
But at the same time, that's also boosting up the guys on the ice.
For sure. And you know what, Mark? Maybe we're old school and behind the times. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
It's a strategy. It's a part of the game, and I don't think that it can be taken away. I don't like seeing the guys get injured in that.
And they've done a good
thing to start, keeping the helmets on. If Svechnikov did not have his helmet on there, that'd have been ugly.
Yeah.
Right? But because he still had his helmet on, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And hopefully he recovers quickly. Hopefully it's nothing too serious for him.
Exactly.
So, it's we'll see. We'll have to see what happens.
It's a pretty gritty series, though.
It has been.
It's going to come down to the wire, you think, Brad? And
I think that one's, watching it now, I think it'll go 6 or 7 for sure. I think Carolina's got the talent there to pull an upset, if you want to call it that.
Right.
So I think it'll be close. Yep. As for the San Jose Vegas series, what do you think?
Wild one.
Did you see the tweets that came out the last couple of days?
No.
So Ryan Reeves, this is paraphrasing, obviously I don't have them right in front of me, but I know Ryan Reeves was talking about Joe Thornton and saying that because Joe Thornton, I guess, said that he didn't see the guy or something along those lines, and then Ryan Reeves came out and said, oh yeah, I have a friend who has the same problem. He's getting old too, and he needs his glasses to be able to see, right? So taking a shot at Thornton. And then Kane, talking about their fight, he said something along the lines of, oh, I thought I was fighting the toughest guy in the league, but it felt like I was out there fighting the Muffin Man.
Oh, I saw that one, yeah.
So it's getting intense on and off the ice in that series, right? Those two teams do not like each other.
Oh, man, has it been good hockey
to watch? It's been good hockey.
I really want to watch that one tonight. It starts right away. What a heck of a series.
It'll be a good game.
You've got, and I just knew that Mark Stone would come out in these playoffs, and he's just dominating that performance for them. That line of Pacioretty, Paul Stastny, and Mark Stone have been just awesome to watch. They lead the playoffs in points each. Stone has 8, Stastny has 8, Pacioretty has 6. They are just dominating the Sharks out there. The Sharks can't seem to find a goaltender as far as I'm concerned. I don't know why they didn't come back to Dell, quite honestly, in Game 3, than starting Jones again. And I think that this is one series. I don't know. It's probably going to start right away. I don't know what the starting goaltender was. I never looked. I would have went with Dell over Jones.
I think they very well might tonight. Again, yeah, we haven't looked to see. It just, neither guy has been that good. And we kind of talked about this, I think, leading into our playoffs,
I think
pre-playoffs show that we did.
That was our kicker against them, right?
Their goaltending just hasn't been very good. Their top 2 defensemen are very offensive defensemen, right? In Burns and Carlson. They don't have any, outside of Vlasic, none of the guys are really like shut down defensemen. So they got to score a lot of goals. I mean, you've seen that. I mean, the last game was 6-3, I think, for the Knights.
Yeah.
So if their goalies can't stop, if they can't keep it below 4 goals from Vegas, they're going to have a hard time winning any more games in that series. And Vegas is heating up at the right time, it sure seems like.
So they are going with Jones again tonight. I had to look it up. And of course they are. It just seems like everybody's doing it. So you know what? My goalie controversies with Calgary, I'm going to stick with Mike Smith. Nobody's sticking with it. And nobody's switching up their goaltenders. They're right now.
It's all staying the same, eh? You're calling it right now?
Yeah.
I think Calgary, though, I think that you'll see some lineup changes. I just don't know if it'll be Mike Smith. I think he'll stay in. They'll give him another game. And I think you'll see some guys coming out of that lineup that are it's going to be a little different.
They're
going to have to.
Yeah. Well, with the San Jose and Vegas series there, I mean, they definitely look like they're going to beat the heck out of each other there.
Whoever comes up against
watching
them
the
after.
Kane and Reeves matchup.
That'll be interesting the rest of the way,
watch.
too. Yeah, I love that. That's for sure.
San Jose is just feeding it back to the point. Carlson and Burns have been exactly what San Jose needs. Pavelski is stepping in. Couture has got to be hurting so bad. I feel so bad for that poor guy for blocking a shot where he did.
And that's what happens with the age, though, too. A lot of those guys are having probably a lot harder time recovering from things, right? I mean, they don't have any real young players for their key players in San Jose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. And I guess, looking at what Mark Stone has done so far in the series, relating it to something else, we know back on during the trade deadline that Calgary was extremely close to bringing him in. They didn't want to give up the asset that in Juuso Välimäki that Ottawa wanted. You wonder now, looking at it though, like, does Calgary look back and say, should we have added a Mark Stone? Would that have made the difference for us if they do go ahead and lose? And it could completely turn around tomorrow night. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in that series. Right. We'll have to watch and see. If they do keep going the way it's going, though, here's a big question for you. Heading into the offseason, because their top players, what's winning the series for Colorado is Colorado's top players are being their top players. And Calgary, Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Elias Lindholm, those guys who carried them throughout most of the season have been absolutely invisible. And this would be the second playoff series in a row that Gaudreau's been a part of where he has not contributed all that much. He hasn't been that difference maker. So the question starts of, is this a guy who can perform in the playoffs? Do you think that this early in his career, after a couple playoffs, if it goes badly the rest of the way, do those discussions start? Is Gaudreau a playoff guy? What do you think? Well,
I don't think you could ever trade him anyway, whether he's a playoff guy or not, unfortunately. I mean, look at what the Vancouver Canucks did with the Sedins, kind of. They were very talented guys. Were they ever the playoff, guys you wanted? I don't think anybody really believes that they were the guys.
That they had that intensity level.
Yeah,
like the 2011 run was that more like Ryan Kessler and Burroughs and some of those other guys that you saw. Was it those guys, even though they weren't the offensive guys, but were they the catalyst for the intensity?
Yeah.
And maybe that's Gaudreau. I don't know. I'm not saying anything bad against him. I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just wondering out loud of does a first round exit after having such a great season start to put those question marks? And if those question marks are there for Calgary, are they there for Tampa?
Well, you're like asking the same question, right? Over there.
Is this a guy who just can't take them to that next level in the playoffs?
Well, if the first two place teams exit the playoffs in the first round, how do they even get any better?
They're both going into cap crunches, so I have no idea.
Yeah.
Calgary's going to have to sign Matthew Tkachuk in the offseason, and that's a guy that you build a team around, in my opinion, because I think just from watching, he seems to be their emotional catalyst along with Giordano. Mm-hmm. Whereas Monahan, Gaudreau, those guys are great players, but they don't seem to be that emotional catalyst. I mean, they provide a lot of the offense.
Yeah.
In terms of who gets these guys ready to go and pumped up, I think it's more so Giordano and a guy like Tkachuk and Mike Smith.
I think over time, Tkachuk probably steps into a role like that a little bit.
I think he's their next captain.
You know?
I do. I believe he's their next captain.
Mm-hmm.
So the question mark is Gaudreau and or Monahan the guys that you want to build it around?
Man, well, those are tough questions.
Tough questions.
Calgary hopefully does not have to answer.
Yeah, hopefully they turn it around. Yeah.
Another series. Have you been watching any of the Dallas-Nashville series?
I haven't. I haven't got a lot of chance to watch that. However, that's one I picked Dallas to win, I think.
Yeah.
And I believe it's going to be a really close series. I think it's two teams that are really good, really defensive teams, so they kind of offset each other.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Dallas have been definitely kind of a one-minded team when it comes to playing on their ice there. They've been seemingly, very short offensively.
Yeah.
Always seeming to be their top guys there, so they need to find some depth scoring there. But Ben Bishop is the reason that Dallas is holding in on that series, as he's coming up phenomenal game after game.
Yeah, that's right.
And not to be outdueled on the other end, though, Pekka Rinne has also looked quite well as well. So it's been kind of a, honestly, like of all the games that are to watch, kind of one of the drier series. Not gonna lie.
It has been.
I haven't been paying
too much. You have to be a fan of one of those teams to really.
It's kind of sad when you go online on TSN to go look at highlights, and they actually don't even have a video package put together for Game 2 of Dallas and Nashville. You have to read the print.
Yeah, and how bad is that?
And this is a couple
right?
days later, mind you. I was trying to look at it tonight before we did the podcast, but I couldn't find the highlight to Game 2.
They're just neither team is built to be offensive, right? I think Nashville would have an edge in that sense.
I think it goes the distance, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes 6 or 7. 7 games probably goes the distance.
Last one, we talk about the Jets. The Jets in St. Louis, that's a very interesting series where the Jets do not seem to be getting the goaltending that they need, out of Hellebuck.
Right, he hasn't been like he was last year, that's for sure.
Yeah. Just kind of struggling to keep it in together defensively. Their defensive zone has seemed to collapse a bit, and they've allowed St. Louis to cycle the puck on them and work it in on them. They've also beat them on some odd-man rushes with a couple shorthanded goals already, I believe.
You have to definitely wonder if Byfuglien's 100%.
Well, Byfuglien looked a lot better in Game 3.
He did.
Than he had in any other ones.
Yeah.
Definitely a question mark, though, because he definitely battled with health his whole time, right?
And it's another one of those interesting ones where, very similar to Colorado, where St. Louis had a terrible start to the season. Then all of a sudden they turned it on at the end and came back. I mean, they were, I believe, I can't remember what the date was, but there was a certain point in the season where it was getting to the end of last year, so the end of December-ish, I believe, where, and it might have even been in January, where they were second last or dead last in the league, St. Louis, and the second half of the season was unreal. So we're looking at a team where you can't judge them based on their positioning, just like Colorado, right? Colorado really turned it on at the end. They were something like 8-0-2 or 8-1-2 in their last 11.
Yeah.
So two teams that I don't think their records accurately reflected the talent that team had. Now, Colorado, the big knock on them was the depth. I mean, they have one of the best first lines in hockey. However, was their depth going to be able to hold up? And so far, it has. So both those are very interesting series. And as for the St. Louis and Winnipeg series, I don't think there really should have been a favorite heading into that series. I think they're very evenly matched teams.
You figured I thought that Winnipeg was going to clean up real quick.
I thought so. However, it's been a surprise, right? I thought that St. Louis that Binnington wasn't gonna be able to hold up as much as he has, and he's been good.
Well, one of the things I heard one of the experts say, and it made a lot of sense about Winnipeg, or about St. Louis, was the fact that when St. Louis is fairly slow on their defense, and if you can get a good cycle game going against St. Louis, you can beat them. You can beat their defense. And they definitely showed lots of keys of that and going on in the game. And I really did agree with that. The fact that if the Jets just learn to cycle the puck more and pin them down deep, that they really can work them and lay up no chance for Bennington. Bennington was still fabulous in game 3 as well. It wasn't so much him that, It
was the team in front of him.
Yeah, it was more so, I think, the team in front of him.
It's been an interesting series. It's been, interesting playoffs all around, right?
So just let's recap here really quickly. Actually, we didn't really talk about the Toronto-Boston one overall that much, other than the reffing. What's your take on that one?
I think it's going to be very close. I think it'll go the distance too.
Toronto's up 2-1.
Yeah, it really the biggest thing for Toronto is that I'd pick Toronto to win here on air. Afterwards, I was thinking, it's going to be close. It's a coin toss in my opinion. For Toronto, I think the big thing is the mental hurdle they have to get over. Mm-hmm. That they haven't been able to beat Boston, and we talked about this too a few nights ago. That they haven't been able to beat Boston in how many playoff series now in a row. So, dating back to a long time ago. For Boston, it's really I think that there's similar to Colorado, except with maybe more talent, but it's more top heavy as well. Like they still have more talent throughout their lineup than Colorado does, but it's top heavy Colorado is. Their first line is definitely their big line.
Well, when that Marchand line is out there, you really notice it. I think for the Leafs here, they definitely found that in the first game they used their speed and their skill, and they outperformed Boston tenfold. In game 2, they tried to come at them and match them with their physicality, and they couldn't.
They just got to play. They got to play their game.
Outplayed, which led to horrible calls and Kadri suspension. And then game 3, the call-in guy was Trevor Moore. He did outstanding. He got them on the board first with a nice dirty garbage goal, picking it out on the side of the net, which I always love. I think one of my knocks against the Toronto Maple Leafs is when I watch them is that nobody stops in front of the net to pick up the rebounds. And they all seem to want to skate by and coast into the corner. You got to stop in front of the net. Yeah. That's something you learn when you're 5 years old when you start playing hockey.
Yeah, you got to have somebody to do that.
Stop skating and pick up the rebounds. Trevor Moore did that. He was worried with the goal. Austin Matthews finally breaks through for them. That's really good for Toronto to see. The Marner should get paid as much as Matthews is getting paid.
That'll be a tough one for the Leafs come summertime.
We can discuss that one another time. But that guy stopped 2 shots at the end of game 3 to save that game for them. I think I think
a lot of people are agreeing with you on that one.
Huge, awesome play. That's what it's going to take. I still think that the Leafs are going to win this one in 6.
Yeah, it's like I said, it could go. I think it'll go either way.
They just have to. They've obviously learned that they cannot play to that physical game with Boston, and they just need to skate around it. Now, what's Boston going to do when they can't get Toronto to hit?
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes for sure.
So you're saying Toronto wins in that one?
I say Toronto in 7.
Toronto in 7.
I'd say. Well, I think it's either going to be Boston in 6 or Toronto in 7.
Okay, I'm saying Toronto in 6. Tampa Bay, Columbus already wrapped up.
See you later, Tampa Bay.
Pittsburgh, New York.
See you later, Pittsburgh.
Over. Can't believe it.
See you next season.
Washington, Carolina.
I say Washington still pulls it off.
And I'm 5?
I say 6. Say 6.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking 6 too. I'm really hoping that Carolina can make a bit more of a series out of it.
I'm hoping as well.
But I still think it's Washington going on. Winnipeg, St. Louis.
I'm still going to stick with Winnipeg in 7.
In 7? Yeah, I definitely think so too. I definitely think they got the heavier power there.
For sure.
Nashville, Dallas?
Still picking Dallas? I was going to say, I said Dallas, I think, when we first talked about it. I'm going to say Nashville. I'm going to go to Nashville, I think, in 7.
Yeah.
Same thing. I think it'll be a close series.
Man, I wanted Dallas to win this one more.
We'll see, though. It'll be close.
I like Ben Bishop, I suppose, for whatever odd reason. But it'll be close. I picked Dallas, and I'll still stick with Dallas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they can find some scoring elsewhere and come up big. And Calgary, Colorado.
I'm going to say Calgary in 7.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say if Calgary can pull it off in 7, I'm going to go on a limb here so everybody can hold me to it. If Calgary can beat Colorado in 7, I think they win the Cup.
Wow.
I think that Colorado is the worst matchup that Calgary could have drawn in the first round. I think it's simply for one reason and this is getting a little too in depth because we'll go through them real quick, but I think the fact that Colorado is one of the faster teams coming into the playoffs, and I think that's Calgary's game. So when they face a team that can match that, I think that's got them in trouble. So I think if Calgary can beat Colorado, I think they go to the Cup.
You opened up a whole can of worms way too late in this show.
I'm putting it out there, but we'll talk about it next show.
Okay, well that's it. He said it. I think Calgary still bounces back myself.
I agree,
and they're gonna take it in at least 6 or 7 here.
And I'm gonna have if they lose, I'm gonna have to eat my words, I guess. But
okay, well that's it for today's show. Thanks for joining us, guys. If you want, you can always check us out on Twitter. Search us up or the Neutral Zone.
Yeah, Neutral Zone CDN on Twitter.
Yeah, and you can also find us on Facebook or on the same tag name. And just check us out, and hopefully we'll come back at you guys next week for another review show of what's happening around the playoffs. Yeah. It's been awesome.
Hopefully you guys enjoy the playoffs and they continue to be as crazy as they have been so far.
That's right. All right. Talk to you guys later.
See you later.
Peace.